Guys, I'm excited for this week's guest. We got Jacy Imilkowski with us, professional project manager, speaker. She's done TED Talks, guys. I really want you to hone in on today's show because there's going to be a lot of good stuff that you could take away in moving forward. Jacy, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am wonderful, George. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to meet you.
No problem, no problem. So, I did that quick little intro, but give us a little bit of backstory. Where are you from? What's your background? What got you to the point of here doing your TED Talks, being a coach, being a speaker? What's your background?
So I'm one of those people that gets bored and finds a new career every 3 to 5 years or so. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, in the good old Midwest, enjoying our snow here. And during my life, I have been in restaurant and retail management. I'm trained as a massage therapist. I've worked in customer service, medical billing resolution, been a corporate trainer, trained as a project manager, worked in change management, trained as a coach, been a professional speaker, part-time art instructor. Just something comes along that really seems interesting to me, and I take it and I integrate it into what I'm already doing. And if I don't make a full pivot, I'll still include it into what's going on. I just love learning and doing more and incorporating passions into our lives.
Man, I knew this was going to be a great show because you sound like myself, and 'cause I'm the same type of person. Always looking for growth, always looking for new opportunities, always looking for. You look at my resume between being in the military. I've done retail, I've done sales, I've been a real estate agent, got my PMP now, back into project management. So I definitely understand that portion of it of always driving for more, always looking for more new experiences. But it's great that it just kind of all intermingles after a while, and you can take skills from one set to another and apply them and make it even better, or even kind of change how the dynamic of that industry is working. So, looking over your profile and everything, some of the big topics I wanted to touch on for my listeners today as we've entered a new year. 2020 was, something different. We'll just call it that. Different.
Right.
And, so I definitely want to touch on big things of, self-sabotage, because that's something that we've talked about in the past on the show, of just that mental voice in our head, you know, looking at having a good work-life balance and personal life balance, as it applies to one being successful on both ends of achieving our goals personally and professionally. And then the dreaded burnout, with the new dynamic of what the workplace looks like, on what that looks like. So jumping into that first topic, you know, let's take a look at self-sabotage. In your words, from your experience, what is self-sabotage?
There are so many facets to that question. It could be answered from so many directions. The first one that comes to mind is when you were talking about that internal voice, that internal critic. How we talk to ourselves is a huge part of whether we're successful at or fail at our endeavors. And it has to do with our self relationship. So if you have a positive self relationship, hopefully you're engaging in more positive self talk, more kindness, more compassion with yourself, and you're likely to be overall more successful. If you have what I like to call kindly a challenging self relationship, or in my case, a totally crap self relationship, which is where I started, then it gets a lot harder. You don't even realize that you're sabotaging yourself. One of the experiences of my life I like to share is that I grew up in domestic violence, and I'm in a good place now. I've been in counseling on and off for about 25 years, been through a lot of treatment, and I'm doing well. But what I tell people is that I hated myself until I was in my early 30s, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it. I was cruel to myself. I was completely unkind. I was super judgmental. I had no compassion. I talked trash to myself. I called myself names, but it was so normalized because of my upbringing. I didn't realize that I was self-sabotaging constantly because it was normal. So one day I go in to see my favorite counselor. This guy's name is Dr. Fish. He's great. And I love that I've had enough counselors that I have a favorite. And I said to him, he's like, how's your day? And I'm like, oh man, everything went wrong and nothing's working out. And today totally sucks. And he's like, so what are you saying to yourself when things aren't working out? And I was like, I tell myself to shut the F up, put on my big girl panties, get back to work, don't bother anyone, like stop crying, don't make it anyone else's problem. What's my problem? Everyone else can do this easier than me. And by the way, shut up. And he was like, oh, JC, you're not very nice to yourself. I swear to God, like my jaw dropped. I stared at him and I laughed until I cried, George. I was like,
Oh, wow.
oh, what are people nice to themselves, Dr.
Like,
Fish?
nice to
Oh,
themselves, right? Right.
that's funny. And he's just like, yeah, they are. Oh,
Oh,
so that's a thing. Like I tell people choice is one of the only things we have, but you can't make a choice if you don't know it's there. I didn't know I could be nice to myself. It had just never come up before. And so in that moment, there's this pivotal moment of like, oh my gosh, the next time I'm trash talking myself, I actually, if I can see it happening, there's a choice I can make to stop that sabotaging behavior and engage in a different one. Not that it was easy, it took a long time to get there, but that realization, that was the foundation, realizing there was something else that could be done.
now that's awesome because, I'm sure, as you've learned going through this, like what, you know, self, talking down to yourself, that kind of seems almost as one of those obvious ones. What are some other signs that people are self-sabotaging themselves other than having, oh, you're dumb, put, like you put your big girl pants on and let's move on. Are there other signs out there that, again, subconsciously we may not know is going on, but it's really what's hurting us inside?
Yeah, a couple that come to mind easily are always taking the easy way out or consistently taking the easy way out. So, um, and it's a combination of that and how do I say this? Um, letting yourself down or betraying yourself might be a way of doing it. So let's say I want to lose weight. And in order to do that, I'm going to not drink 5 sodas a day. So I make that commitment to myself. I'm going to not drink 5 sodas a day. But halfway through the day, the day is overwhelming. I get tired and I don't even necessarily notice it. Soda's a comfortable thing for me. It just kind of happens. It's not mindful and it's not intentional, but the soda creeps into my hands and I start drinking it. So I just did something easy. I caved in with that willpower and I betrayed the commitment to myself. But it's not that obvious, right? We don't see
Right.
it. These behaviors and these habits come up. Another thing is saying, oh, I'm going to, there's a project that I need to get done. I have a deliverable that's due, or in civilian, regular person talk or in layman's talk, there's something that I need to get done by a certain time,
Right.
but you just don't do it. It's like, oh, I'm distracted by the internet, and then I read a book, and then I went for a walk, and then I did some dishes, and then I did some laundry because we're all working at home, so we're constantly distracted by our home environments. And those distractions, letting ourselves get distracted, is actually a kind of sabotage.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's one of those things, and I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm pretty sure we're all guilty of it. If you're
Oh
not,
yeah, me
I
too.
don't believe you if you say that at any point across your life, because it is one of those things to where, even sometimes when it's not sounding negative, like you said, it's just so unoblivious to what you're trying to do and commit to. Now, how do you see that when it comes to, overall performance, both in the workplace and professionally? Is there kind of a counter, like, battle that happens that really stops people from reaching peak performance?
I think one of the things that happens a lot, and this is the reason why it gets so sneaky, is the sabotaging part of ourselves, the part of our brain that's trying to keep us away from the challenge or the commitment. It leverages our values and our strengths against us. So for the example of, I have something that I need to get done by 4 p.m. It's 3 p.m. and I walk through my kitchen and I see the dishes on the counter and I'm like, I like having a tidy house. It's important to have a tidy house. Cleaning the house is important. If I do dishes, I'm a good person for doing dishes. So my values for being tidy, for being organized, for keeping a clean house are actually undermining the like, I need to get work done and I made a commitment. So it doesn't feel like we're betraying ourselves because we're actually using one of our positive traits of cleanliness to distract ourselves. And in the professional environment, sometimes our values of our values of being accurate can turn into perfectionism. Our
Right.
values of communication can turn into micromanaging to make sure people are doing exactly what you think they should. Our values for quality can turn into, neurotic just concern about whether or not things are working. So it's a matter of finding out what our strengths are and then intentionally, when we're engaging in activities, saying, am I leveraging this strength to my best merit, to my organization's merit? Am I using this to really serve myself? Or am I just using this value or strength out of habit or even as a self-soothing behavior? Like, if my report is hard and I don't want to write it and doing the dishes is easy and makes me feel good because I checked something off a list, it's more of a soothing behavior than a functional cleaning behavior. You know what I'm saying?
No, that makes total sense. Now, what can people do to kind of help test that? How can they, if they don't really know that, maybe they're more of the I don't talk negative about myself, but we have self-sabotage that kind of sneaks up. Is there anything we can do to kind of help test, or do we really need an outside perspective of someone telling us, hey, don't do that, not good. What are some things that people can look at and say, hey, or even some techniques of like, am I self-sabotaging myself?
It's a yes and, basing on that good old improv idea of yes and. One of the things that I do most, and to be clear, I am super guilty of this kind of distraction, this kind of like, I know I'm supposed to do something responsible, but I'm going to sit
Right.
and read a book for 5 minutes, which becomes an hour, which now I'm late to something. I do it all the time. One of the ways to be aware of what we're doing is to pick a focus, be intentional about what you're doing. So it might be a focus for a day, it might be a focus for an hour. One of the things that I work with is I have PTSD, anxiety, and depression that I'm all actively treated for as a result of my upbringing. And that manifests with a lot of distraction. Executive function challenges, things don't always stay in my head. I can be very forgetful. So sometimes I literally have to have a Post-it note sitting on my computer that says report. And if I start doing anything else and I notice that Post-it note, I'll be like, am I working on my report right now? I'm not.
Right.
Time to go back to the report. And it's that visual reminder that helps me. But even taking a moment in anything we're doing, just taking a breath, stopping, literally becoming present in the moment and saying, and what I'm doing right now serving my intentional goal for this hour, day, whatever it is? And if the answer is no, being able to walk away from it, being able to stop halfway through a sink full of dishes and be like, this isn't my report. I need to go do it right now.
Right.
And it's taking those moments of awareness and choosing to become aware. It's mindfulness is a big key to it. I know mindfulness is a big buzzword, but
Mhm.
mindfulness is it's about being present and being intentional. What's happening right now and what actions are we choosing right now?
Awesome. And to go back to kind of the other side, maybe you could share an experience on just kind of some of the ways that you got through this, because I talked about or ended the year kind of leading up to, hey, whatever your project is, we're going to make a project management plan, right? This is everything that goes into it. We're going to calculate all this thing else. And now we're at the point of execution. And we have that issue of, okay, now I have this big scary plan. Now a lot of that self-doubt starts to come into my head that I cannot do this, or that negative talk. What were some coping mechanisms to kind of help you get over that hump of, I do have to be nice to myself. I know this is what I have to do in order to move forward.
Yeah, the tools that I love best for that is something that coaches refer to as observing without judgment, or the new phrase I learned for it, which I love, is blameless discernment.
Oh,
So So we're going to get into a little bit of science here for a second.
No, go ahead.
So at a very high level with neuroscience, there are positive neurotransmitters and negative neurotransmitters. Like, have you ever had someone say something to you that made you feel all warm and fuzzy, like it was really nice, and you were just like, oh, I like that person, you know?
Yeah.
That's positive neurochemicals, right? That's oxytocin and all sorts of fun stuff. And have you ever had somebody say something to you that offended you or upset you or hurt your feelings, and like your stomach dropped and you're just like, I do not want to be near this person?
Yeah.
Those are negative neurotransmitters. Now, the same things happen when we talk to ourselves. When you say something kind and positive to yourself, it actually creates those positive neurochemical responses. It creates relaxation and calm and ease in your body. And when we talk trash to ourselves, it creates those negative neurotransmitters, the cortisol, adrenaline, and stress. We get tight stomach, our heart rates elevate, our muscles get tight. So blameless discernment is the skill of looking at what we've done and observing it as facts without applying any judgment. So a really great tool is to take a time period and do a review. I like daily ones if you're feeling really challenged. At the end of the day, look at your day and say, did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, great. And if the answer is no, the key part of this skill is to just observe that as a fact without translating it into a judgment of yourself.
Wow.
I only got half of what I was supposed to get done. So let's do a little lessons learned here, a little project management lessons learned. Where did I get distracted? What stopped me from doing what I wanted to do it? What could I do differently? Let's make choices to do those things differently tomorrow. And it's like, when you come to a project lessons learned, no one goes into a lessons learned meeting like, this effing project stank and blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, maybe that's happened once or twice, but it's the exception to the rule, right?
Right.
When you're in that professional environment on a project, people tend to be, very reserved about it and very good at that blameless discernment without judgment. With ourselves, we tend to judge ourselves really hard all the time. So what can you do to just observe and be kind and let things exist without them having to be a reason for wrong? And the idea is maybe we're not wrong. You're always in the right place. You're always where you're supposed to be. And it's always somewhere that you can use to learn what you want to do differently in the future.
That's awesome. Now, are there any kind of tips or tricks to, hey, try this, or pulling, how would you go about, or at least maybe start that, what either mindset, or how do you just stop yourself from actually throwing that judgment out there, right? I almost look at it as, almost just trying to find something to blame, or
Mhm.
excuse of why it didn't happen, either to self-justify it, or how do you go about that, of just identifying it and stopping? Like, any tricks to that?
I love that you brought up this idea of like part of you wants to find someone to blame. So we're talking now habits. We're talking into habituated behavior. So habits in our mind, those are established neural pathways. They are thought processes that have happened over and over and over. We don't even have to think about them. They're automatic. And the thing is, the more we have a thought pattern, the more effective that neural pathway becomes. So the way I had this described to me once is, think of a thought like a bobsled. The sled goes down the top and it just starts sliding. In order to break those habitual thoughts of like, how do I blame? I'm going to judge someone, that frustration and that valid emotional response. She's like, you have to stop the bobsled halfway down the run and start building a new track. And that's the metaphor that she used. So the way that I like to describe it, I come back to the quote by the esteemed Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there's a pause. And in that pause is our ability to learn and grow. Paraphrasing there. So I didn't get what I wanted done. I look at my checklist, it's not done. That's the stimulus. My response is to get angry. If that's a habit, it's going to happen right away. And what I need to practice is I may get angry and be like, oh, this sucks. I'm a big jerk. Wait, notice I am trash talking myself right now. This is not what I want to do. I'm going to stop doing it now and choose to do something different. It comes back to that observation. You have to come to the moment of observation. And when you're first doing that, it might come hours later. You might look back and be like, oh my God, when I looked at my day, I totally judged myself so hard. I did not actually support any learning there. Then maybe next time it'll be a half hour later that you realize it happened. And in a few weeks, you'll start noticing, well, it's happening. And eventually, and this can take days, weeks, for me, some of this took years to get out of my very habituated behaviors, noticing before it happens. So you get to the point where you're looking at your checklist, not everything is done, and being able to say, okay, this is where I would normally judge myself, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do something different now before it even happens. So building awareness of our responses and then preempting them with what we want is really key. And that awareness, it involves intention. So one thing you can do is set a reminder on your phone, just asking yourself a question. Did I judge myself today? Where did I judge myself today? Set up a reminder for your daily review of your goals and whether you've achieved them, and have a question in there. Are you observing without judgment? Yes or no? What can I do to judge myself less around this? And as the more you think about these questions and the more those regular reminders come up, the more those questions will become habituated.
Oh man, I love that. And guys, you heard me talk about it, of, always trying to refine, right? As project managers, we always stop, pause, look, what went right, what didn't go right. Try to not necessarily figure out the why, but how can we either get ourselves back on track, or if we actually need to make a brand new plan. It's a real thing, guys. And it's something that you can do on a day-to-day basis, just internally. And you may already do it at the end of the day of a review of your checklist, but these are just key points that you can add, key questions that you can add to help get that mindset right. And as we jump into kind of in transitioning into what's next on trying to now balance life and work, right? And where do people fail at that, on trying to balance those two things?
The failure that I see so often is people want to serve others, and they take that value of service and compassion and their hearts of service for others, and they give too much of themselves away. And they don't keep enough to take care of themselves. So people overserve others, and then they end up underserving themselves. Have you ever gotten to the point where, like, someone's asking you for something and you just say yes because you're supposed to say yes and it's a nice thing to do, but then you realize that you resent them for asking you to do something, and then you get mad at yourself for saying yes, but you're like, why are they even asking me to do things?
Right.
That resentment, that's a great sign that you're headed towards a burnout. Or if somebody asks you to do something and you physically feel visceral anxiety, like your stomach tightens up, or you want to physically pull away from them or emotionally shut down, those are signs that you are giving too much of yourself to other people. It's that oxygen mask concept. You need to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. But those of us with deep hearts of service, we're validated by helping other people. So we chase that external win from helping someone else, and we don't always do the internal service, which can be a lot harder to do. Like building self-awareness and doing that internal mental maintenance can be a lot of work. And sometimes it's easier to just spend an hour helping your neighbor fix their porch when you're supposed to be taking care of yourself instead.
Right. No, and to that point, that's actually on both sides, right? We can say that we do that not only on our professional life, because I
Oh,
see that
yes.
being as the most obvious one, but even on our personal life, in our family lives, that there needs to be some balance there as well, correct?
Absolutely. And this is actually the number one type of people that I coach. I coach high empathy project managers that are burned out from overserving others and underserving themselves. And it usually manifests as they take on more work than they can do in a work day. They don't feel comfortable setting a boundary around their work and telling people, I can't do this. I don't have the time for it because I need to cut work and go to my family. So they feel guilty about not seeing their family enough, but when they're with their family, they don't have the energy to be present enough and
Right.
to engage with their family the way they want. So family is causing guilt at work, work is intruding on their family time, and they don't own themselves. And it's about that individual's boundaries. It's about their relationship with themselves and what they are going to set up and what kind of respect they're demanding of their time, because people who want to really serve other people, they value other people's time more than their own.
Right.
I have 40 hours in a week. Someone gives me 5 extra hours of work, but part of me says that person's more important than me. So I'm going to find those 5 magic hours. I'm going to kill myself a little to help them. And breaking that pattern and being like, I really don't have the 5 hours. If you want me to say yes to this, what do I say no to? Or
Right.
I don't have the time, go to my leader and try to find the time and negotiate it, but not just giving it away.
No, that's big because it's I think of myself, I think of project managers, but then I think 2020 merged those two things together. The one place that you would find peace for yourself, or at least have the opportunity to have some self-care, now became your workplace. Is that something that
Mhm.
you saw with your clients in 2020?
Oh my gosh, so much, because now you have your kids running around in your office while you're supposed to be homeschooling them, and you have two people's worth of work to do because your organization had to let people go, and so everyone's workload increased. And and that was another thing that was really hard, is talking to people that felt like they couldn't say no because the organization was so hard pressed, because staffing levels dropped because of impacts of COVID. They're like, I can't say no. And I had to ask so many people the question, if you say yes to the pressures at work, what are you saying no to for yourself? What are you denying yourself? And sometimes they couldn't even figure it out. They're like, I don't know, nothing really. I'm like, really? Because you came to me for a reason. And when you came to me, you were overwhelmed, you were missing your family, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you don't have any energy, you're not feeling good. And they're like, oh, yeah, all of that. Like, it's like they're fish, right? They're swimming in this stuff like water every day. It's so
Right.
normal to them, they don't feel it. Like the way that I didn't know I hated myself because it was so normalized. The anxiety and the stress are so normalized for themselves that they can't always see that that's what they don't want.
Now, what are some tips that you give your clients to, one, self-identify that, and two, kind of remedy it?
Yeah, the tips are to be honest with yourself and be kind to yourself. And sometimes the easiest way to do it is to say, if somebody else came to you and said that they were feeling the way you feel, what would you say to them? So if somebody came to you and said, I can't sleep, I feel guilty all the time, my stomach is always upset, and my hair is falling out, would you be worried about that person? And they're like, yeah, okay, then you should be worried about you because that's what's happening to you. And helping them take that skill of external care, which they're so good at, and then reflecting it internally. Uh, so that's one that I really like. And I had another one that just literally ran out of my head as I was saying that.
No, that's great because it is one of those things, and I'm sure a lot of your clients and a lot of people listening, like, this is probably brand new for them. They don't understand. They don't understand it. Yeah, they know what maybe bringing work home one day a week was, or doing some extra time on the weekend to prep for what was coming up the following week. But now that they bled together, it's like,
Mhm,
what do I do? And now I almost don't know what normal is at this point, and I even look at, internally here, my wife works for the University of Texas, great school, and they harp on that more and more. Are you seeing employers starting to do that as well? Like, hey, you need to, I'm going to give you time within your day for some self-care, now that you're working at home, because I understand you have a 1-year-old running around who says hi
mhm.
in all her meetings, right? But they give them that opportunity. Is that something that you're at least advising your clients to maybe talk to work on, hey, can I get a 30-minute like USA myself or for my own mental health?
You know what actually just really gets me about that is a lot of the people that I work with, they don't take those opportunities even when they're offered.
Yeah.
They they know that it's there, but they don't take advantage of it, again, because they're driven by that value of service. They're overdriven by that value of serving other people, and they don't see the value in taking time for themselves. So they'll get their half hour for their self-care, and they'll
Right.
end up answering emails for a bunch of other people during that time. They don't actually turn it around. It's having to reach the point of, again, those intentional decisions. I have a half an hour for me. What am I going to do with it? And then, at 25 minutes, get your reminder. 25 minutes, did I spend my half hour actually focusing on me and relaxing? Yes or no? If I didn't, blameless discernment. What could I do differently next time? What can I change? Because blame doesn't serve us in these circumstances. It's our culture is very about blame. Who's responsible for
Right.
this?
Right.
But but blaming someone doesn't actually fix any problems. It can sometimes help us figure out a root cause and why something happened, but blame existing as a long-term concept doesn't serve anything.
No, and that just leads into, as this goes on too long, we start to see that burnout
Mhm.
professionally and even, personally at home. What are some of those key indicators that, hey, things are going down the wrong path, and if I keep this up, you know, the the plane's going to crash into the Hudson River.
Some key indicators, and to be very clear, a lot of these indicators are also point towards seeking out mental health counseling and support, which I am a huge supporter of. I am in counseling right now. I have been for years. I think everyone should be in counseling because, frankly, 2020 was traumatic for everyone. And trauma is a real thing. It impacts our brain. It impacts our neurology. It impacts how our brains and bodies function. So for anyone watching this, if you're not currently seeing a counselor, you probably should be. You probably have something going on that's worth it. Um, and I'm not judging people who don't get counseling. There's a lot of people who don't for a lot of reasons. It's a good tool for those that are comfortable with it and know to reach out for it and that it works for them. So things to recognize: if you used to really like your job and you don't care anymore, look for shifts in your emotion. If you're not interested in things, if your kids come home and they're like, hey, look at my thing I did, and you can't bring yourself to care, you don't have the energy to care, that numbness is a huge sign of burnout. You've just been overwhelmed for so long that you're not really experiencing those emotions very, very strongly anymore. The way one of my counselors described it to me is like, you've been running at a 10 for so long that you don't feel a 9 or an 8 or a 7 anymore. And unless someone comes in with like a leg falling off, you're just like, all right, meh. So
Right.
that numbness or that lessened response is a really important sign. Changes in your sleep or eating patterns. If you've been eating a lot more or a lot less, if you're not sleeping or if you're sleeping all the time. During one of my biggest periods of burnout, what would happen was I was working 80 hours a week at work. I didn't think it was a problem at the time. It seemed very normal to me, but I would literally come home from work, sit on the couch, fall asleep, wake up long enough to eat a very light dinner because I wasn't hungry, and then I would go back to bed and sleep until the next morning when I would go back to work for another 12-hour day.
Wow.
All I was doing was working and sleeping. So just looking at your patterns, and sometimes it's even asking someone else, asking a close friend, a parent, even a trusted colleague, what's different about me? Are there things I do now that I didn't do before? Because we're not always good at seeing ourselves because we're too close.
Right.
But oftentimes, I mean, have you ever had somebody tell you something that they're just like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, like it's the most obvious thing in the world and it just blew your mind, you had no idea that it was coming?
happens on a daily basis.
Right, I know, right? So having other people, and that's one of the things about coaching, and one of the things I love about coaching. My counselor does this for me too. You can get it from friends, from mentors. You don't have to have a paid coach for this. It's people that are brave enough and love you enough to offer you an honest outside perspective on who you are and what you're experiencing. Someone that'll be like, you know what, JC, you've been a lot snippier lately. Like, I feel like you've just been angry lately. And if I'm like, I don't feel angry, I don't think I'm angry. What are you even talking about? And they're like, you're doing it right now. Like, oh, this.
Snickers, are you hungry?
Yeah. Like, this is actually how I feel all the time. But someone else just helped me
Right.
realize that it's anger. I'm actually angry all the time and I didn't know it. That's a problem. That's a thing I want to change.
Right. That's in again, that's something that I touched on last year, with an episode that we talked about, you know, our resourcing. And I use that, and I'll use quotations on resourcing, because the whole episode I talked about, our inner circle in our personal resourcing. And one of the biggest things that I advocate for is, even on that inner circle, it's not always the best idea to have 100% like-minded people surrounding you, because they may not see, if they think just like you, they're not going to see some of the problems that you see. And even if it's that one friend that is just, like you said, bluntly honest with you, it's always kind of good to have that almost antagonistic type person, at least surrounding you, because they're going to cut through some of the BS and say, and identify it. Is that something that you also have your clients kind of look at, of like, hey, do you have that friend, or what's that surrounding look like?
Yes, the coaching term for that is provocateur. You want to have you want to know someone that's a provocateur, that's not afraid to make people angry. They might even be validated or fulfilled by ruffling people's feathers. They like saying things just to see people go, "What?"
Yeah.
But that person is super duper powerful, because when that person is partnered with love, and
Right.
they'll just be like, I'm gonna give it to you straight. Here it is. You're being terrible. You're being really mean. And I'm saying it because I love you. You're being mean to me and hurting my feelings. And it's like, oh, that hurts to hear, but I needed to hear it from someone that I loved, or someone that just does things totally differently. Like, you're always doing things this way. There's this other and this other and this other way to do it. Why are you always doing things the way you're doing it? Do it different. Oh, I guess I could try that. So I love that idea of different perspectives and different, just having people that support you in different ways. And going on a little bit of a tangent, looking at your inner circle, and I'm willing to bet you talked about it in this resourcing episode, finding the people around you that are toxic and that are not serving you. Like, are there people that every time you talk to them, you feel bad about yourself, or feel bad about your life, or feel judged, or feel shamed? Is there anyone in your life that makes you feel shame or guilt? If you can take that person out of your life, if they're a colleague or a friend, like someone you don't have to, they're not your kid, or like, someone you have to see
Right.
every day, then tapering off or removing that relationship could serve you in the long run, even if it's hard to do.
Yeah, no, that's another big, I talked about that with also, with the self-talk, when we talk about that, because a lot of that reverts back to it. Because if you do have that one person, now they're just helping you confirm what you already thought about yourself, right?
Mhm.
And now you're just making it more of a toxic situation, because now you have that encouragement of, or at least someone else validating a negative thought that you already thought about yourself, and trying to identify those people. And it does take the ability to step back and kind of evaluate what's going on, because it's one of those to where, I told people in the episode, not only look at the people that are looking, talking kind of down at you, or anything else like that, but also that the idea is too big, and someone of your statue, or within your race, or within your culture, can't achieve that. So they're not
Mhm.
downplaying whatever goal or achievement you're trying to do, which then goes back to that, okay, well, I guess they're right, it's a stupid idea, I was dumb for even having that idea. And then it's just like a vicious circle that, that continues on and on and on. And and then people just give up, burn out, and leave their goals, in their projects behind them because they feel like they're not going to be able to achieve it.
And you know what the hard truth of it is? We outgrow people in our
Yeah.
lives. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person or they're a bad person, but you outgrow them. If your goal is to start a business and become an entrepreneur, and you have someone that you've been friends with your whole life, but they're not motivated to support you in that, and all they do is complain about football and the weather and, oh man, people like you, what, just whatever, it'll be fine. If they're not actively supporting you, they might be a fine person, but maybe they're not your person anymore. You've gone somewhere else with your lives, and that's okay. It's hard, but it's okay.
No, that self-realization on that that is key as well, because it's one of those things that, I've even seen it more, not to completely break away from them, but I've seen that on different cultural levels as well, of just like, hey, you cannot achieve that, and we're not meant to be rich. And just from a cultural perspective, I've seen that aspect of it too, to where it's just like, who says I can't have a $500,000 house? Like, I've worked my butt off to have it. Like, mom, dad, like, I get it. That wasn't something that we did or had access to, but now I do. Let's change the paradigm. Let's change the branch on the tree. There's nothing that says that I can't, and it's something that, again, a lot of you have to step back and kind of assess the situation to kind of see what's really going on. And hopefully, listeners are starting to do that. And I think for 2020, it helped that I think a lot of people did that in 2020 to say, holy crap, I do have to either hit the pause button, take a knee, and see what's going on, because I haven't left my house for 97 days, and
Mhm.
you know and things are changing, and I'm changing. I don't like what I do, or I want to change. And I think, did you see a lot of your clients kind of hit that self-realization in 2020, that whether
Oh,
it's career change or person, just changing things of what they want to do personally and professionally?
my friends, my clients, myself, my family. I have one friend who went back to law school. I have a friend who started a business. I have a client who left her corporate job and became an author. I have another client that started an entire new concept of change management. She's developing an entire new framework of change management to start delivering. Like, she's incorporating these amazing concepts, and all of it is because she's like, the world is, not only is it messed up, but it's just getting harder and harder, and that makes me want to help more and more. I think so many people were inspired by the stress that was coming up and the way everything was going up in flames. It's that whole phoenix rising deal. Like, everything is so hard. What matters to me more than anything right now to do? That's what I need to do.
No, that's awesome. And I I see it. I worked through a lot of the pandemic because I'm at a small company, so we were still able to work, but I see it on a day-to-day basis, on just cities, friends. They're growing, they're changing, they're seeing it, the growth of this show. People are, they like the concept. They're like, holy crap, a light bulb's going off. And we talked before the show began. And if we can just, if you had one thing kind of on each of those topics, whether it's the self-talk, the work-life balance, and the burnout, that my listeners can take away from each of those topics, what would it be?
You have to be kind to yourself. And I can barely say this. I'm like getting misty just saying this. All of that, all of it to me comes down to self-relationship. How well do you know yourself? How honest are you with yourself? And what are you willing to do for yourself so that you can live a good life, which you do in fact deserve? Because once you're living a good life, once you're living your best lives, it's going to elevate the lives of people around you. There are very few people that watch your show that are going to be like, living my best life is living on an island on a pile of cash and not talking to anyone. No, when they're living their best lives, they're going to feel amazing. They're going to be able to help people. They're going to inspire people. They're going to serve people, and they're going to do it while still feeling amazing. And that's going to inspire people more. They're going to be like, oh my God, I can do everything I want to do and feel amazing. Look at that. I can do it. Just the to me, self relationship is the foundation of everything. And if your self relationship is poor, if you don't get along with yourself, if you're not kind to yourself, if you're constantly, whether intentional or not, betraying your goals and undermining what you're trying to achieve, then you deserve to change that relationship and you deserve to have a better relationship, whether that's talking to a friend or family member, a mentor, a spiritual leader, a counselor, a coach, reading a book that'll get you the framework that you need to change things. You deserve a positive self relationship. You deserve to achieve your goals in life. And the people around you deserve that too. They deserve your success.
That's powerful. AC, where can people find you if people want to look for you? Do you have social media, website? Where can people go and look for you?
I am on LinkedIn. It is the only social media platform I actually lurk around on. My name, I tell people it's Jacy Imilkowski. Just think I milk cows on skis to present it. And if you want to find me, my website is jcimilkowski.com. But I also just bought the web domain imilkcowsonskis.com and it
Nice.
redirects. So if you want to find me, just go to imilkcowsonskis.com and it'll
Nice.
take you to my website. But please, seriously, people can message me on LinkedIn, reach out to me. I love having virtual coffees with people. I'm definitely the one-on-one connector. I don't just collect connections there. I really value LinkedIn. And I think in 2020, LinkedIn became much more of a connected, functional community and not just a popping off about my resume type place. It's become a really wonderful place.
No, that's awesome. And we will have the link, both links, on our show website so you guys can reach out to her directly. Jacy, thank you again for your time and thank you for the wealth of information. This was a great show. I love it. And I hope, like I told you pre-show, if you guys can take away one thing, and this was her goal as well. If you guys could take away one thing from what we talked about today, then we are happy campers, and this show and episode was a success. Thank you for your time. And I'm definitely going to have to bring you back, either later in the year. And so we can talk and kind of look at what 2021 was and kind of how, kind of wrap this all together at the tail end of the year.
I would love that, George. It has been such an honor. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I love your approach and what you're bringing to people, and the integration of project management into our whole lives is a fantastic skill set and tool to build for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, guys, make sure you go visit our website, go visit her website. And Jacy, again, thank you, and much love in 2021.